There is a presence in our lives so constant, so fundamental, that we often forget it is even there. It is the silent companion to our entire history, a lantern in the deepest night, a keeper of time's oldest secrets. Ever since the first human consciousness looked up into the sky, it has been there, hanging like a pearl in an ocean of ink, a familiar face that changes yet never truly leaves. It is the moon. Its silver light has bathed the landscapes of our ancestors, inspired our poets and artists, guided our sailors across vast oceans, and marked the rhythm of countless cycles of life on our planet. It is far more than a mere satellite of rock and dust. It is a part of our collective soul. In the quiet moments of the night, it is a universal symbol of solitude, of reflection, and of the gentle, mysterious forces that govern our world. We see it, and we feel a connection not just to the cosmos, but to every human who has ever looked upon that same luminous face. Its influence is woven so deeply into the fabric of our culture that we can barely perceive the individual threads. The very word we use for a segment of our year, the month, is a direct echo of the moon's patient journey around our world. Our earliest calendars were not solar, but lunar, etched into bone and stone by ancient peoples, who saw in its reliable phases a way to measure the passing of their lives. It is a character in our oldest mythologies, a deity in countless religions. It was Selene to the ancient Greeks, driving her silver chariot across the sky. It was Chandra to the Hindus, a god of the night and of vegetation. It is the celestial body that determines the dates of sacred festivals like Easter and Ramadan. Its light was thought to bring madness, giving us the word lunacy, a belief that speaks to the profound, almost mystical power we have always attributed to its glow. It is the anchor of our night, the metronome of our tides, the most intimate celestial object we know. Born, as our best theories suggest, from a cataclysmic collision in our planet's distant past, the moon is not just a companion. In a very real sense, it is a piece of the Earth itself, a lost sibling forever bound to us by the invisible tether of gravity. We take for granted this constant presence, this gentle gravity, this silent influence. We see it as part of the immutable scenery of our world, a permanent feature of the universe. But what if it were not? What if this companion of 4.5 billion years, this pillar of our world, simply ceased to be? What if, in a single quiet moment, without fanfare or explosion, the moon vanished forever? This is not a question of destruction, but one of absence. It is a thought experiment that forces us to unravel the very threads that weave our reality together, to understand just how deeply and delicately our existence is intertwined with that silent, orbiting sphere. This journey we are about to take is not to a place of loud catastrophe, but to a world of profound silence, a world of extraordinary and slow-moving consequences. It is an exploration of a planet unmoored, a meditation on balance, and a story about what we only truly understand once it is gone. It is a journey that will reveal that the Earth's greatest companion was also its most vital guardian. Before we witness that silent vanishing, before we step into that world of endless night, I would love to know from which part of our beautiful planet you are joining this journey tonight. Please write your city or country in the comments below. It is a wonderful way to see how we are all connected under the same sky. A global family of curious minds sharing this moment of reflection, even as we imagine that sky profoundly and permanently changed. And if you enjoy these calm explorations into the great questions of our universe, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support is what allows us to continue making these journeys together, always calmly, always at the pace of the universe. Your presence here helps to build this quiet corner of the world, a space for wonder and for peace. Our exploration begins not with a bang, but with a whisper. It starts with a simple, yet physically impossible premise. One moment, the moon is there, a familiar touch of gravity, a point of light in space, a silent witness to our world. And the next, it is gone. The question, what would happen, contains a hidden trap for our imagination. We expect immediate, cinematic chaos. We imagine the world being instantly thrown into turmoil, a script written by Hollywood. But the universe operates on its own schedule, governed by laws that are far more subtle, patient, and in many ways, far more powerful than any sudden cataclysm. The first consequence of the moon's disappearance would not be a physical jolt, but a slow, creeping realization. The story of a moonless Earth is a narrative that unfolds not just over seconds and hours, but over weeks, centuries, and millennia. It is a story of an old and intricate cosmic dance coming to a sudden end, and a lonely planet having to learn entirely new steps. And so, let us take that first step into the first few moments of a universe that is suddenly and irrevocably incomplete. Let us begin our gentle journey into the great and profound absence. The moment the moon vanishes, nothing happens. At least not for us, not here on Earth. For about 1.3 seconds, the world remains suspended in a state of cosmic illusion, held in the ghost grip of a body that is already gone. This brief deceptive pause is a profound lesson in the nature of the universe itself. It reminds us that we are always living in the past. We never see the sun as it is, but as it was 8 minutes ago. We see the distant stars, not as they are, but as they were centuries or millennia ago. And so it is with our closest companion. The moon we see in our sky is never the moon of the present moment. It is always the moon of 1.3 seconds ago. Its light and its gravity must cross the 250,000-mile gap of empty space to reach us, and that journey, as instantaneous as it seems, takes time. Gravity, like light, does not travel instantly. It propagates across the fabric of space-time at the same finite speed, approximately 186,000 miles per second. So for this fleeting moment, the Earth continues its dance with a phantom, responding to the gravitational pull of a partner who has already left the floor. The oceans still feel its pull. Our planet still wobbles around a common center of mass that is no longer shared. It is a final fading echo in the well of space-time. Then, after that second and a half has passed, the final message arrives, and reality asserts itself. Two things happen at once. First, and most visibly, the moon's light winks out. If it was in the night sky, its presence would be erased. One moment, it would be there, a shining disk or a slender crescent, casting its familiar, gentle light. And the next, there would be nothing. This would not be an explosion. There would be no fading light, no dying ember. It would be an instantaneous deletion. The last photons of light to leave its surface have completed their journey, and there are no more following behind them. The space it once occupied would become a perfect, star-dusted black. For anyone watching, it would be a moment of profound cognitive dissonance, a violation of the fundamental rule of object permanence. Our brains are not wired to comprehend something so massive simply ceasing to exist. The shock, the disbelief, would be the first ripple of this event in the pond of human consciousness. Simultaneously with this visual erasure, the gravitational connection would snap. The invisible tether that has bound the Earth and Moon for billions of years would be cut. The phantom pull on our oceans, on our atmosphere, and on the very crust of our planet would cease. The Earth, for the first time in its mature life, would be gravitationally alone in its immediate neighborhood. This is where the first real, physical adjustment begins, though it would be far too subtle for any of us to feel directly. We often picture the moon orbiting a stationary Earth, but this is not quite right. In reality, the Earth and Moon orbit a common center of mass, a point called the barycenter. Because the Earth is about 81 times more massive than the Moon, this barycenter is located inside our planet, approximately 1,000 miles, or 1,600 kilometers, beneath the surface. Imagine a graceful, cosmic dance. The Earth is the larger dancer, and the Moon is the smaller one. As they hold hands and spin, the Moon travels in a wide circle, while the Earth itself performs a smaller, corresponding circle around that internal barycenter point. This creates a gentle, constant wobble in the Earth's path as it journeys around the Sun. It is a slow, rhythmic, and perfectly balanced motion. With the Moon suddenly gone, this wobble would instantly cease. The larger dancer's partner has let go. The Earth would no longer be pulled into that small monthly circle. It would immediately settle, its trajectory through space smoothing out into a perfect, uninterrupted ellipse around the Sun. This change, while astronomically significant, would be imperceptible to us on the surface. We would feel no jolt, no shudder. And yet, it would be the planet's first fundamental response to its new solitude. The ancient dance has ended. The partner has vanished, and the Earth now begins a new, lonelier, and subtly different journey through the cosmos. The true, tangible consequences of this new path, however, are only just beginning to stir in the deep, dark waters of the world. The first true test of our new reality would arrive with the setting of the sun. As the final colors of twilight fade from the western horizon, humanity would collectively experience the first night of the Great Absence. And it would be a night of profound, almost unimaginable darkness. We are so accustomed to the presence of moonlight that we often underestimate its pervasive power. A full moon on a clear night can be bright enough to read by, to cast sharp shadows, to see the faces of those we are with. Even a slender crescent moon provides enough of a gentle wash of light to give shape and depth to the landscape. This light is not just a convenience. It is an integral part of the nocturnal environment, a soft, diffuse glow that has shaped the very evolution of sight for countless creatures, including ourselves. Without it, the very nature of night would be fundamentally rewritten. The new darkness would be unlike anything a modern human has ever experienced. It would be deeper than the blackness of a new moon, deeper than the darkness of a remote forest on a cloudy night. It would be an almost absolute, palpable black, broken only by the cold, distant, and unhelpful pinpricks of starlight. The sky, far from the polluting glow of our cities, would be a spectacle of breathtaking yet alien beauty. The Milky Way, our own galaxy seen from within, would stretch from horizon to horizon, not as a faint, milky band, but as a brilliant, textured river of light. Its rifts of dark dust and its dense, glowing core would be visible with a clarity that no human has ever seen from the Earth's surface. Billions of stars, previously washed out by the moon's gentle glare, would pop into view, crowding the celestial canvas. It would be a sky of overwhelming detail, a vision of the raw, unfiltered cosmos. But this beauty would be cold and severe. The stars offer light, but they offer no illumination. Their distant photons are too few and too faint to light up the world beneath them. And so, while the sky would be brilliantly full, the land would be plunged into an abyss. This new, profound darkness would trigger an immediate and catastrophic cascade through the animal kingdom. The nocturnal world operates on a delicate balance of light and shadow, a balance that has now been shattered. Consider the sea turtle hatchling, emerging from its nest in the sand. For millions of years, its primary instinct has been to scurry towards the brightest part of the horizon, which was always the gentle, shimmering reflection of the moon upon the waves. This ancient, hardwired behavior is its key to survival. On this first moonless night, that instinct becomes a fatal flaw. The brightest horizon is gone. The turtle is disoriented, confused, just as likely to crawl inland towards its doom as it is to find the life-giving sea. Or imagine the world's great coral reefs. These underwater cities are not silent at night. Many species of coral have evolved to synchronize their spawning, the release of eggs and sperm, with the phases of the moon. Once a year, prompted by the specific light of a full moon, entire reefs erupt in a blizzard of life, a beautiful and vital act of mass reproduction. On this night, the cue never arrives. The water temperature is correct, the time of year is right. But the celestial trigger is absent. The spawning fails. It is a silent, unseen catastrophe that threatens the very foundation of the most diverse ecosystems in the ocean. The effects would ripple outwards from the smallest moth that uses the moon for navigation, now fluttering aimlessly, to the largest predator on the savanna. The lion's hunt is a game of stealth, made easier in the deep darkness of a new moon. Now, every night is the new moon. A balance of power between predator and prey, a dynamic honed over millennia, is broken overnight, leading to chaos in food webs across the globe. For humanity, the cultural and historical void would be just as profound. For millennia, we have lived our lives by the moon's rhythm. Its patient cycle was our first calendar, the basis of the word month. We planted our crops, held our festivals, and told our sacred stories according to its phases. To lose it would be to erase the face of our first clock from the sky. Our myths and legends would be rendered hollow. The moon is a central character in the human story, a symbol of romance, of mystery, of madness, of transformation. It is the serene goddess Artemis, the bringer of werewolves, the keeper of lovers' secrets. All of this is torn from our cultural vocabulary. The great works of art it inspired, from Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata to Van Gogh's Starry Night, would become memorials to a vanished sky. Our nights would become colder, not just in temperature, but in spirit. The sky would feel empty, a vast and indifferent cosmos filled with distant, cold stars, but lacking its one familiar, intimate face. We would be left with a sky that is scientifically vast, but emotionally barren. This first moonless night would be a lesson in just how much of our world, both natural and cultural, was built around that silent, silver companion. It would be a night that teaches us that some things are so fundamental to our identity that we do not even recognize them as separate from ourselves until they are gone. As the first moonless night gives way to the first moonless day, the most dramatic and immediate physical consequence of the moon's disappearance would begin to reveal itself, not in the sky above, but in the great oceans below. For billions of years, the Earth has been a living, breathing planet, and the tides have been its breath. Twice a day, the oceans inhale, drawing the water level up along the coastlines of the world. And twice a day, they exhale, releasing the water back into the basins. This rhythmic, planetary-scale breathing is one of the most powerful and visible effects of our connection to the moon. A constant pulse driven by a delicate, silent, gravitational dance. It is the heartbeat of the ocean, a rhythm so reliable that entire ecosystems and human cultures have been built around it. But with the conductor of this oceanic orchestra now gone, that heartbeat would fall silent. And the breath would catch in the planet's lungs. The world would now witness the great unmooring of the tides. To understand what is about to happen, we must first understand this beautiful and surprisingly complex dance. The moon's gravity pulls on the Earth and on everything on it. But this pull is not uniform. It is slightly stronger on the side of the Earth that is closer to the moon, and slightly weaker on the side that is farther away. This difference, this gentle gradient in the gravitational force across the planet's diameter, is the engine of the tides. Imagine the Earth's oceans as a flexible, watery shell. The moon's gravity pulls on the water on the near side, creating a bulge, a vast continent-sized mountain of water that is drawn up towards it. This is a high tide. But, perhaps counterintuitively, a similar bulge is also created on the exact opposite side of the planet. This second bulge is the key to the twice-daily rhythm, and it forms for a slightly different reason. The moon is not just pulling on the water. It is pulling on the entire solid planet as well. It pulls the solid body of the Earth toward it, more strongly than it pulls the water on the far side. In a sense, the solid Earth is pulled out from under the water on the far side, leaving that water to bulge outwards, left behind in the cosmic dance. So, at any given moment, there are two high tides on Earth, one on the side facing the moon, and one on the side facing directly away. As our planet spins on its axis once every 24 hours, our coastlines are carried through both of these bulges. This is what we experience as the rising and falling of the tide. We are not so much seeing the water rise as we are rotating into a part of the ocean that is already raised up. Now imagine this intricate system with the moon suddenly gone. In that instant, after the 1.3-second delay for the final gravitational signal to fade, the primary force driving this entire engine is switched off. The invisible hand holding up these two colossal mountains of water is removed. The energy that sustained them is gone. The two massive bulges, each containing trillions of tons of water, would begin to collapse under the simple, familiar pull of the Earth's own gravity. This would not be a gentle process. It would be a catastrophic redistribution of water on a planetary scale. The high tides across the globe would begin to recede with a speed and force never before witnessed. Coastlines that were submerged would suddenly be exposed. Vast stretches of the seabed, places normally seen only at the lowest of tides, would lie open to the air for miles. This event would create colossal waves, not tsunamis in the traditional sense, which are caused by a sudden displacement like an earthquake, but something far larger in scale, global redistribution waves. As the ocean sought a new uniform level, the water would slosh back and forth across the great ocean basins. These waves, potentially hundreds of feet high in the open ocean, would race across the planet, crashing against continental shelves in unpredictable and devastating ways. Any settlement along a coast would be an unimaginable peril. This initial chaos, however, would be relatively short-lived in geological terms. After a few days, or perhaps a few weeks, of this violent sloshing, the oceans would begin to settle into a new, much calmer and much weaker rhythm. For the moon is not the only celestial body that exerts a tidal force on the Earth. The sun does as well. But because the sun is so much farther away, its tidal effect is less than half that of the moon's. So a moonless Earth would not be tideless. It would have subtle solar tides. A high tide that once rose by 20 feet would now only rise by about 8. The great, powerful breaths of the ocean would become shallow whispers. The unmooring would be complete, leaving behind a world with quieter but profoundly and permanently altered oceans. In the weeks and months following the great unmooring of the tides, a new and permanent quiet would settle upon the world's coastlines. The violent, chaotic sloshing of the oceans, finding their new equilibrium, would have subsided, the immense redistribution waves having dissipated their energy against the shores of the continents. What is left behind is a planet governed only by a new, much gentler, and far simpler pulse. The solar tides, once a junior partner in the great dance of the oceans, now rule alone. Their rhythm is predictable, peaking at noon and at midnight, perfectly in sync with the sun's position in the sky. But this simplicity is a sign of profound impoverishment. Gone is the complex interplay of lunar and solar forces that created the great spring tides and the gentle neap tides. The ocean's voice, once a rich and varied song of powerful crescendos and soft decrescendos, has been reduced to a monotonous, whispered hum. This new quiet is the soundtrack to a slow and silent ecological catastrophe, one of the most devastating and widespread extinction events in the planet's long history. The primary stage for this silent tragedy is the intertidal zone, that vibrant, dynamic ribbon of life that exists between the high and low marks of the tide. This is the world between worlds, an environment of constant change and immense physical stress. The creatures that live here are among the most resilient on Earth, adapted to withstand the crushing force of waves, the searing heat of the sun during low tide, and the cold darkness of submersion during high tide. Their entire existence, from their feeding patterns to their reproductive cycles, is exquisitely timed to the reliable, twice-daily rhythm of the lunar tides. With that rhythm now broken and replaced by a much weaker one, their world is erased. The new, feeble solar tides mean that the vertical range of the sea's rise and fall has been cut by more than half. The intertidal zone, as it once was, has ceased to exist. We can imagine walking along a familiar stretch of rocky coastline in this new world. The highest reaches of the shore, a place that was once splashed and submerged by the powerful spring tides, is now a permanent desert. It is a zone of death, littered with the white, sun-bleached shells of barnacles and mussels still cemented to the rocks. A gallery of ghosts, a memorial to an ecosystem that is no more. A little further down, in what was once the bustling heart of the mid-tidal zone, the devastation continues. This area is now split in two. Its upper half is also left high and dry, while its lower half, which once experienced periods of life-giving exposure to the air, is now permanently drowned. The vibrant communities of sea anemones, sea stars, and resilient seaweeds that once thrived here are gone, unable to cope with the new permanence of their conditions. The air is thick with the smell of decay, a mournful scent rising from trillions of decaying organisms. The familiar sounds of the seashore, the scuttling of crabs, the calls of gulls foraging, are replaced by an eerie silence. This is not just a loss of individual creatures, it is a complete unraveling of an entire food web, a cascade of extinction that ripples outwards with devastating consequences. The algae and plankton that coated the intertidal rocks were the foundational pasture for a host of grazing animals, like limpets and snails. As they disappear, so do the creatures that fed on them. The oystercatcher, a shorebird whose very name speaks to its reliance on this zone, would find its pantry empty. The great migratory flocks of sandpipers that travel thousands of miles between hemispheres, relying on the predictable bounty of the exposed mudflats to refuel, would arrive to find barren, lifeless landscapes, leading to starvation on a massive scale. This cascade continues up the food chain, even affecting terrestrial animals. Bears, raccoons, wolves, and even tigers in certain parts of the world have learned to come to the coast to feast on the rich protein sources left behind by the receding tide. This crucial buffer in their diet is now gone, forcing them to compete more intensely for resources inland and putting immense pressure on other ecosystems. Beyond the immediate coast, this new quietness in the oceans would have a profound effect on the entire planet. The strong tidal currents generated by the moon act as a giant planetary scale mixing spoon. They do not just move water horizontally. They are crucial for driving vertical circulation, pulling cold, deep, nutrient-rich water up to the sunlit surface. This process of tidal upwelling is the very foundation of many of the world's most productive fishing grounds. Without the moon's powerful pull, this vital vertical mixing would be drastically reduced. The surface waters of the oceans would become warmer, clearer, and far more sterile, like a tropical desert. Plankton blooms would fail, and the entire oceanic food web, from the smallest fish to the great whales, would be starved from the bottom up. The quiet ocean would now be a hungry ocean, its legendary bounty a thing of the past. The shallow, gentle breaths of the new solar tides would be the size of a planet whose vibrant coastal heart has stopped beating. For the first few years, perhaps even the first few decades, after the moon's disappearance, a fragile and deceptive sense of normalcy would return to human civilization. The initial shocks, the terrifying darkness of the first night, the chaotic redistribution of the oceans, the silent death of the coastlines, would have passed. A new generation would be born into this changed world, a generation that never knew the silvery light of a moon in the sky. To them, the brilliant, star-dusted tapestry of the moonless night would be the only sky they have ever known. The weak, gentle solar tides would be the only rhythm of the ocean they have ever witnessed. They would read in history books and see in ancient art the image of a great, luminous sphere, but it would feel like a myth, a legend from a lost and distant past, as fantastical as a dragon or a unicorn. Most importantly, the fundamental rhythm of life on Earth, the steady and reliable march of the seasons, would remain unchanged. Spring would still follow winter, its warmth coaxing new life from the ground. Summer would still follow spring, with its long days and direct, life-giving sunlight. The harvests of autumn would still arrive, and the cold of winter would still settle over the land. This predictability, this sacred cycle, is the very foundation of civilization. It allows us to plant crops with the confidence that they will have time to grow. It allows us to build cities with the knowledge that they will not be alternately baked by unbearable heat and then frozen solid by an ice age within a single lifetime. With this cycle apparently intact, humanity might be forgiven for believing that the worst is over, that the planet has absorbed the loss of its companion and settled into a new, albeit diminished, equilibrium. This belief, however, would be a profound and dangerous illusion. For deep within the mechanics of the solar system, a far more insidious and long-term change would be slowly, imperceptibly taking place. Unseen and unfelt, the Earth would be starting to wobble. To understand this great wobble, we must think of our planet as a spinning top. A simple toy top, when spun rapidly, becomes remarkably stable. Its axis of rotation holds steady, resisting any force that tries to knock it over. This quality is called gyroscopic stability. The Earth, spinning on its axis once every 24 hours, is a colossal gyroscope. Its immense mass and rotational speed give it a powerful angular momentum, a deep and inherent stability. But this spinning top is not perfectly upright. Relative to its flat orbital path around the Sun, the Earth's axis is tilted by approximately 23.5 degrees. This axial tilt, or obliquity, is the sole reason we have seasons. It is a simple and beautiful piece of celestial geometry. When your hemisphere is tilted toward the Sun, the sunlight strikes the ground more directly, and the days are longer. This is summer. When your hemisphere is tilted away from the Sun, the sunlight arrives at a shallower angle, spreading its energy more thinly, and the days are shorter. This is winter. The entire climatic system of our world, from the flowing of the jet streams to the patterns of rainfall, is built upon the foundation of this specific, stable tilt. For billions of years, the gravitational influence of our now vanished moon has acted as the great guardian of this stability. If the Earth is a spinning top, the moon's gravity has been like a gentle, steadying hand resting upon it, preventing it from tipping and wobbling. It does this by constantly pulling on the Earth's slight equatorial bulge, a thickening around the planet's waist caused by its own spin. This pull creates a gentle, consistent torque that averages out other gravitational disturbances, ensuring that our planet's axial tilt remains remarkably stable, varying by only a degree or two over vast eons. This stability is perhaps the moon's greatest yet most invisible gift. It is the gift of a predictable climate, the gift that allowed complex land-based life to flourish, and that ultimately made our civilization possible. Now, that steadying hand is gone. The Earth, a solitary spinning top, is now fully exposed to the much smaller, but still significant, gravitational nudges from the other planets, particularly the colossal giants, Jupiter and Saturn. Their influence is not a powerful tug, but a series of tiny, rhythmic, and persistent whispers that play out over millions of years. But without the moon to dampen their effects, these whispers can now directly influence the Earth's tilt. The process is one of resonance, where a small, repeated push at just the right time can cause a large system to begin to swing. And so, the great wobble begins. It is not a violent shake, but a slow, creeping drift of the planet's axis, 1/100th of a degree in a single lifetime, a fraction of a degree over a century. It would be utterly imperceptible. Only the most precise astronomical instruments, patiently measuring the apparent positions of distant stars over decades, would be able to detect the change. This imperceptible drift is the most terrifying threat of all. It is a silent, cosmic time bomb, and its fuse has just been lit. The foundation of our world's climate has been fractured, and the long, slow journey towards chaos has now inevitably begun. Let us now journey forward in time, far beyond the initial shock and the slow ecological collapse that followed the moon's disappearance. Let us travel 10,000 years into the future of this solitary Earth, an immense span of time. It is difficult for the human mind to truly grasp. 10,000 years ago, our own ancestors were just beginning the first experiments with agriculture, laying the very first stones of settled civilization. The entire sweep of recorded human history, every empire, every invention, every war, every poem, fits within this vast expanse of time. The world we knew, the world of the early 21st century, would be a distant, mythical memory to any observer in this future, a legend as remote and half-forgotten as the city of Atlantis is to us. This leap in time is necessary because the great wobble of the Earth's axis, the silent time bomb set in motion by the moon's absence, is a force that operates on the patient, inexorable timescale of the cosmos. On this 10,000-year timescale, the slow creeping wobble of our planet's axis would have transformed from a subtle astronomical curiosity, detectable only by the most sensitive instruments, into the single most dominant and destructive feature of life on Earth, the steady, predictable rhythm of the seasons. A rhythm that had been the bedrock of our world for millions of years would now be a chaotic and violent memory. The Earth's axial tilt, no longer anchored by the moon's patient gravity, has been left to the mercy of the faint but persistent nudges from Jupiter and Saturn. In its chaotic dance, the tilt has now drifted wildly. Let us imagine for our journey that the axis is no longer tilted at a gentle 23.5 degrees, but has now careened over to a severe 45 degrees. This is not just a change in a number. It is a complete rewriting of the rules that govern our world's climate. In this new reality, the very meaning of the word season has changed. The gentle transitions of the past have been replaced by a brutal oscillation between two hellish extremes, the Great Summer and the Great Winter. Let us imagine standing in a familiar landscape, perhaps the plains of North America or the fields of Europe, during the height of the Great Summer. The sun, at the summer solstice, would no longer hang high in the sky. It would be almost directly overhead. Day after day, for months on end, its light would be a relentless, unblinking glare, and its heat would be unlike anything known to our current world. Temperatures would routinely soar to 60 or 70 degrees Celsius, which is 140 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. The land would be baked into a cracked, sterile desert. Rivers would evaporate, leaving behind dusty, serpentine scars on the landscape. Forests would be tinder dry, erupting into continent-spanning firestorms that would rage for months, darkening the sky with smoke. Life would be impossible on the surface. Any surviving creatures would have to exist in deep caves or in the deepest parts of the now stagnant oceans, or perhaps have migrated to the polar regions, which would now have the only temperate climates on the planet. Then, just 6 months later, this same landscape would be plunged into the opposite extreme, the Great Winter. The sun would become a pale, distant ghost, a weak disk of light that barely scrapes above the horizon for a few hours a day before vanishing again, leaving the world in a prolonged, icy twilight. The cold would be absolute, far more severe than any polar vortex of our time. Temperatures would plummet to well below minus 50 or 60 degrees Celsius. The brief, violent storms of the transitional autumn would have buried the land in dozens of feet of snow, which would now be compressed into a vast, continent-spanning sheet of ice. Great glaciers, miles thick, would grind slowly across the landscape, pulverizing the baked earth of the summer before, burying the ruins of any civilization that once stood there. The transitional seasons of spring and autumn, once gentle periods of renewal and harvest, would now be the most violent times of all. The spring thaw would be a global cataclysm. The sudden melting of the immense winter ice sheets would release unimaginable quantities of water, causing floods on a biblical scale that would scour the continents. The rapid shift in temperature between the still frozen hemisphere and the rapidly heating one would create storms of unprecedented power. Hyper-hurricanes with winds exceeding 400 miles per hour that would rage across the globe. Life on this new Earth would be defined by a relentless cycle of being burned, flooded, frozen, and battered by storms. The moon's greatest gift, we would finally understand, was not its light nor its tides, but its peace. It gave us a gentle, nurturing cradle, a world of moderation. Without it, the Earth is no longer a home. It has become a beautiful but fundamentally hostile world of fire and ice. Our journey has taken us 10,000 years into a future of fire and ice, a world where the very seasons have become instruments of chaos. We have witnessed the devastating consequences of the Earth's great wobble, the slow, inexorable tilting of its axis in the absence of the moon. It is a frightening vision, and it raises a profound and fundamental question. Why? Why was the moon so vital? What was the invisible architecture of our solar system that kept our world so safe for so long? And how did its removal lead to such catastrophic instability? To truly understand, we must pause our forward journey through time and take a gentle step sideways into the quiet, elegant world of celestial mechanics. This is not a world of numbers and equations, but one of beautiful, simple principles that govern the dance of the cosmos. It is in understanding this dance that we can truly appreciate the depth of what was lost. Let us return to our image of the Earth as a giant spinning top. The first and most important principle of any spinning object, from a child's toy to a planet, is something called angular momentum. You can think of angular momentum as a kind of rotational stubbornness. Once an object is spinning, it wants to keep spinning in the same way, with its axis pointing in the same direction. You can see this with an ice skater. When she is spinning with her arms outstretched, she rotates at a certain speed, but when she pulls her arms in, she spins much faster. She has not pushed off the ice again. She has simply changed her shape, and to conserve her angular momentum, her speed must change. This inherent desire to keep spinning in a stable way is what gives our planet its fundamental gyroscopic stability. However, the Earth is not a perfect sphere. Its rapid 24-hour rotation creates a slight but very significant distortion in its shape. Just as a potter's wheel causes a lump of wet clay to bulge outwards at its middle as it spins, the primordial Earth, when it was still young and molten, bulged at its equator. Even today, as a solid body, our planet is slightly wider at the equator than it is from pole to pole. This equatorial bulge is the key to everything that follows. It is the handle upon which other celestial bodies can exert a gravitational grip and attempt to change our planet's tilt. A perfect, featureless sphere would be much harder to tip over. But our planet's bulge gives the forces of the cosmos a place to hold on. Even with the moon, our Earth is not perfectly still. It already has a slow, steady wobble called precession. Imagine watching a spinning top very closely. As it spins, you will notice that its axis is not perfectly frozen in one spot. Instead, the tip of its axis slowly draws a small circle in the air. The Earth's axis does the same thing. Over a very long and slow cycle of about 26,000 years, our planet's axis traces a great circle in the heavens. This is why our North Star changes over time. Today it is Polaris, but in 13,000 years it will be the bright star Vega. This precession is a stable, predictable, and gentle motion, and the force that causes it is primarily the gravitational pull of the moon on our equatorial bulge. Here we find the beautiful paradox of our planet's stability. The moon, the very body we credit with preventing a wobble, is also the primary cause of our existing stable wobble. How can this be? The moon's gravity is constantly trying to pull our 23.5-degree tilt into a more upright position, aligning it with the moon's own orbit. It is trying to straighten us up, but because the Earth is spinning so rapidly, this steady, sideways pull does not succeed in changing the angle of our tilt. Instead, like a gentle, constant push on a gyroscope, it causes the axis to swing around in that slow, predictable 26,000-year circle of precession. The moon turns a direct pull into a graceful circular motion. It transforms a force that could cause a chaotic tipping into a slow, rhythmic, and harmless dance. Now, let us remove the moon from this delicate equation. The Earth's equatorial bulge is still there, and our planet is still spinning, but the dominant, steadying hand of the moon's gravity is gone. The Earth's axis is now subject to the much weaker and far less consistent gravitational nudges from the Sun, and more importantly, from the giant outer planets, Jupiter and Saturn. Their gravitational pulls also tug on our equatorial handle, but unlike the moon's constant, close-range presence, their influence varies dramatically as they and the Earth move in their vast orbits. Their pulls are irregular, sometimes canceling each other out, sometimes reinforcing each other. Without the moon's powerful averaging presence to dominate the system and lock it into a stable precession, these chaotic, long-term whispers from the giant planets are now free to wreak havoc. They can slowly begin to push and pull our planet's tilt into wild, unpredictable swings. The loss of the moon, then, was the loss of our great protector. It was the loss of the lead dance partner, whose strong and steady lead kept our world spinning in a graceful, stable rhythm. protecting us from the chaotic whims of the wider solar system. Our journey now takes its most audacious leap, propelling us across an almost incomprehensible chasm of time. We leave behind the world of 10,000 years with its burgeoning chaos and travel forward to a point 1 million years after the moon's disappearance. This is a time scale that dwarfs the entire existence of our species, Homo sapiens. A million years ago, our own ancestors were early hominids, just beginning to master the use of fire and the crafting of simple stone tools. The entire story of humanity, the development of language, the birth of art, the rise and fall of every civilization, the dawn of the atomic age and the information age, all of it would be a thin, microscopic layer in the deep strata of this new Earth's history. Any physical trace of our existence, our cities, our monuments, our dams, would have been utterly and completely erased, ground into dust by a million years of relentless climatic violence, buried under miles of sediment, or scoured from the face of the planet by continent-spanning sheets of ice. We are now visitors to a truly alien world, a planet that is still the Earth, but one that has been fundamentally and geologically reforged by a new and brutal set of rules. After 1 million years, the great wobble of the Earth's axis is no longer a developing crisis. It is the established and permanent reality of the planet's climate system. The chaotic dance, driven by the ceaseless gravitational nudges of the outer planets, has settled into a new, violent equilibrium. The planet's axial tilt now swings back and forth like a slow, colossal pendulum. Over a cycle of tens of thousands of years, the tilt might drift from a minimum of perhaps 10 degrees, making the planet more upright than it is today, to a maximum of 60 degrees or more, tipping it almost onto its side. This cyclical tilting means that the Earth is now locked in an endless oscillation between two extreme states, a global hothouse and a profound icehouse. The gentle, four-season rhythm that nurtured life for billions of years is gone forever, replaced by this brutal, long-period swing between planetary fire and planetary ice. Let us first imagine the world during the peak of a hothouse phase, when the axis is tilted to its maximum. The poles, now angled so severely towards the sun during their respective summers, receive an incredible amount of direct solar energy. All the ice on the planet melts. The ancient, miles-thick ice sheets of Greenland and Antarctica, which had survived for millions of years in our own epoch, would be gone completely. This colossal volume of meltwater would raise global sea levels by hundreds of feet, drowning coastal plains and creating vast, shallow epicontinental seas in the interior of the continents. The global climate would be intensely hot and humid, a world of perpetual tropical heat, racked by immense, globe-spanning hurricanes born from the superheated oceans. Then, over the course of the next 20 or 30,000 years, the pendulum swings back. The axial tilt decreases to its minimum, and the planet plunges into a deep icehouse phase. With the axis nearly upright, the poles receive very little direct sunlight throughout the year. The lack of a significant tilt means the heat from the equator is not efficiently distributed. The poles would begin to freeze on a scale that dwarfs any ice age our world has ever known. Ice sheets, thousands of feet thick, would once again grow from the poles, spreading downwards to cover vast portions of North America, Europe, and Asia. So much of the world's water would be locked up in this ice that sea levels would plummet, exposing the continental shelves and connecting lands that were once separated by seas. This endless, violent cycle of global melting and global freezing would become the planet's primary geological engine. The surface of the Earth would be in a constant state of being resurfaced. During the icehouse phases, the slow, grinding advance of the continental glaciers would act like a colossal bulldozer, scraping entire landscapes down to the bedrock, pulverizing mountain ranges into dust, and carving deep, immense valleys and fjords. Then, during the rapid transition to a hothouse world, the melting of these glaciers would release freshwater floods on a scale that is difficult to comprehend. These were not the floods of a single river valley, but cataclysmic megafloods that would roar across continents, powerful enough to carve canyons the size of the Grand Canyon in a matter of weeks or months. The rate of erosion on this new Earth would be orders of magnitude higher than it is today. The constant cycle of being ground down by ice and then scoured by unimaginable floods would mean that the very face of the planet would be in constant, violent flux. The long-term stability that allows for the slow building of complex soils and the maturation of ancient forests would be impossible. The atmosphere, too, would become unstable, with massive releases of methane from melting permafrost during hothouse phases triggering runaway greenhouse effects, and fluctuations in oxygen levels as vegetation booms and busts. In such a world, what life could possibly survive? The stable havens required for the long, slow evolution of complex, intelligent life are gone. The survivors would likely be the simple and the robust, microbes buried deep within the Earth's crust, extremophiles clustered around volcanic vents in the deep oceans, and perhaps on the surface, only the most adaptable, fast-breeding generalists. The moon, we would realize after 1,000,000 years, did not just give us stable seasons. It gave our planet the geological peace required for life to evolve beyond the simple and into the wonderfully complex biosphere we once knew. Our journey into the future of a moonless Earth has shown us a world of profound and violent change. A planet reshaped by chaotic seasons and scoured by ice and flood. We have witnessed the slow unraveling of the stability that made our world a haven for complex life. But now, we must turn our gaze in the opposite direction. We must journey not into the distant future, but into the deep primordial past, to a time before complex life even existed. We must return to the very dawn of our planet, some 4 billion years ago, to ask an even more fundamental question. We have seen that a world without a moon struggles to sustain life. But could such a world have ever given birth to life in the first place? The answer, whispered by some of our most compelling scientific theories, is that our silent, celestial companion may have been more than just a guardian. It may have been the crucial catalyst, the primordial helper, that allowed the very first spark of life to ignite in the sterile oceans of a young Earth. Let us try to picture our world in this ancient epoch. The young Earth was a barely recognizable planet. It was a violent, volcanic world, shrouded in a thick, toxic atmosphere of carbon dioxide, methane, and sulfur, almost entirely devoid of free oxygen. The oceans were a warm, chemical-rich soup, bombarded by a constant hail of asteroids and comets, and zapped by intense ultraviolet radiation from a young, furious sun. It was in this chaotic, yet promising, environment, what Charles Darwin once poetically called a warm little pond, that the miracle of life was set to occur. The basic chemical building blocks, amino acids and nucleotides, were forming. But for life to begin, these simple bricks needed to be assembled into much more complex, self-replicating structures, the precursors to RNA and DNA. This is the greatest mystery in all of science. How did a random soup of chemicals organize itself into the intricate, information-carrying molecules of life? A growing number of scientists believe the answer lies with the moon. In this deep past, the moon was not the small, distant orb we know today. Having formed from the debris of a great impact with Earth, It was born in a much, much closer orbit. It might have been 10 or even 20 times closer than it is now. From the surface of the primordial Earth, the moon would have been a colossal, overwhelming presence in the sky. Its detailed surface features visible to the naked eye. This extreme proximity combined with a much faster spinning Earth, a day may have lasted only 6 to 8 hours, would have had one spectacular consequence: megatides. The gravitational pull from this close-range moon would have created tidal forces hundreds, perhaps even thousands of times more powerful than the ones we experience today. These were not the gentle, lapping tides of our world. These were daily cataclysms. Vast walls of water, perhaps hundreds of feet high, would have surged across the barren, volcanic coastlines twice during each short day. The scale of the intertidal zones would have been immense, with hundreds of miles of land being cyclically drowned and then exposed. And it is here, in these vast natural laboratories of the primordial coast, that the magic may have happened. These megatides created the perfect conditions for concentrating the building blocks of life. Imagine a shallow tidal pool, rich with chemicals from volcanic vents and delivered by comets. As the megatide rushes in, it floods the pool with a fresh, dilute solution of these chemicals. This is the wet cycle. Then, just a few hours later, the tide recedes with incredible speed. The intense heat from the young sun and the planet's own geothermal energy would rapidly evaporate the water left behind in the pool. This is the dry cycle. This endless, rapid, and predictable wet-dry cycle is thought to be the key. As the water evaporated, the simple chemical building blocks within it would have been forced into close proximity, becoming incredibly concentrated. This high concentration dramatically increases the chances of them linking together, forming longer and more complex chains, a process called polymerization. The tide would then rush back in a few hours later, shuffling the new molecular creations and introducing new ingredients before receding again to repeat the concentrating process. For millions upon millions of years, these megatides acted as a relentless, planetary-scale chemical engine, mixing, concentrating, and cycling the primordial soup. They provided the perfect mechanism to bridge the gap from simple chemistry to the complex, information-rich chemistry required for life. Without the moon's close-range, powerful pull, this crucial wet-dry cycle would have been absent, and the oceans might have remained a dilute, sterile soup forever. The spark of life may have simply never found a chance to ignite. This realization adds a profound new layer to our sense of loss. The moon is not just our planet's stabilizer and its lantern in the night. It may be our ultimate ancestor, the cosmic midwife that helped birth the very first living cell, from which we are all descended. Our journey has carried us across immense vistas of time, from the far future of a geologically ravaged Earth to the deep past of its fiery, life-giving creation. We have explored the physical consequences of the moon's absence, the silencing of the tides, the destabilizing of our seasons, the collapse of ecosystems, and the potential erasure of our very origins. We have seen how a single, silent act of vanishing can rewrite the story of a planet. But now, we must turn our lens away from the external world of physics and biology and focus inward upon the more subtle, yet equally profound, landscape of the human experience. For the moon was never just a physical object. It was also an idea, a symbol, a muse, and a mirror. Its disappearance would leave a void not just in the heavens, but in our collective soul, a cultural emptiness that would alter our understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe forever. First, we would lose our one true universal landmark throughout the entirety of human history, Across every continent and every culture, the moon has been the one celestial object that everyone could look up and see. A shepherd in ancient Judea, an emperor in imperial China, an astronomer in classical Greece, and an astronaut standing on its very surface have all gazed upon the same familiar face. It is a shared celestial touchstone, a silent witness that connects every generation of humanity. It binds us to our most distant ancestors and to our contemporaries on the other side of the world. To look at the moon is to know that you are sharing a moment with billions of others, and with the countless billions who came before. Its loss would be a profound act of severance. This universal thread of shared experience would be cut, leaving humanity more isolated, not just from the cosmos, but from its own shared past. The sky would no longer hold a common ground for all people in all times. With this severance comes the hollowing out of our mythologies and religions. The moon, with its dramatic and predictable cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, has always been a primary character in the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of the world. It was the Egyptian god of time and knowledge, Khonsu, traveling across the night sky. It was the fierce Aztec goddess Coyolxauhqui, her body dismembered and cast into the heavens. In countless traditions, it represents the divine feminine, a powerful counterbalance to the masculine energy of the sun. Its phases, waxing, full, and waning, became a perfect metaphor for the stages of life: the maiden, the mother, and the crone. These are not just charming folktales. They are the foundational frameworks our ancestors used to understand the most profound concepts of existence. The moon's cycle taught us about time, about change, about death, and, most hopefully, about renewal. Its disappearance would render these ancient stories inert, turning them from living metaphors into baffling artifacts of a lost reality, their central character inexplicably written out of the script. This void would echo through our art and our very language. The word Monday in English is quite literally the moon's day. The word menstruation, a fundamental biological rhythm, shares the same ancient root, a testament to how our ancestors linked the cycles of the body to the cycles of the sky. Our word for madness, lunacy, shows how deeply we connected its light to the mysterious workings of the human mind. These words, now stripped of their original meaning, would become linguistic fossils. Our art, too, would be muted. Think of the sense of romance and longing in a moonlit scene in a painting, the feeling of mystery and foreboding it creates in a story, the swelling of emotion it inspires in a piece of music, like Debussy's immortal Clair de Lune, which simply means moonlight. The moon gave us a rich and varied palette for expressing the most subtle and powerful of human emotions. Without it, the night loses its primary muse, and our creative vocabulary is irrevocably diminished. Finally, and perhaps most deeply, the disappearance of the moon would create a psychological imbalance in the human experience. We are creatures of duality. We live our lives balanced between the light and the dark, the known and the unknown, the conscious and the subconscious. The sun has always been the star of our conscious, waking life. It represents clarity, reason, logic, and the world of action. The moon, in turn, has always been the symbol of the other side of our nature. It is the ruler of the night, the realm of dreams, of intuition, of mystery, and of the subconscious mind. It does not give answers like the sun. It invites us to ask questions. It does not demand action. It invites reflection. Its loss would be the loss of this vital counterbalance. The night would cease to be a time of mystery and wonder and would become simply a time of absence, a utilitarian period of darkness between one day and the next. We would have lost the celestial mirror to the most mysterious and profound parts of our own minds. In losing the moon, we would lose more than just a rock in the sky. We would lose a god, a clock, a muse, and a fundamental part of what it has always meant to be human. Our journey has carried us through the internal landscapes of the human soul, exploring the profound cultural and psychological void left by the disappearance of the moon. We have mourned the loss of our myths, our muses, and our universal landmark. But now, we must turn our gaze outward once more, not to the past or to the present, but to the future. We must consider what the moon represented, not just for who we were, but for who we hoped to become. For humanity has always been a species of explorers, driven by an insatiable curiosity to see what lies beyond the next hill, the next ocean, and ultimately the next world. In this grand, unfolding adventure of cosmic exploration, the moon was destined to be our most crucial and immediate partner. It was to be our eighth continent, our nearest harbor in the vast ocean of space, our first true stepping stone to the stars. Its disappearance would not just change our night sky. It would fundamentally alter the future trajectory of the human species, perhaps confining us to our cradle forever. The loss begins with our own history. The act of landing on the moon in the mid-20th century represents one of the pinnacle achievements of our species. For one brief shining moment, the entire world held its breath and watched as two human beings stepped onto the surface of another world. It was a demonstration of our incredible ingenuity, our courage, and our ability to achieve the impossible. That achievement, and the grainy television images that broadcast it, are woven into the fabric of our modern identity. But in this new reality, that achievement is erased. The footprints left in the lunar dust, the flags planted in the silent regolith, the scientific instruments that continued to send back data for years, all of it is gone. Our greatest journey is now a story without a destination, a historical account that points to an empty patch of sky. The tangible proof of our ability to reach beyond our home world has vanished, leaving the dream of space exploration feeling more like a fantasy than a destiny. But the loss is far more than just historical or symbolic. It is a profound, practical, and logistical catastrophe for our future in space. For decades, the collective dream of space agencies around the world has been to return to the moon, but this time, to stay. This was not just for the sake of adventure, but because the moon was seen as the essential training ground and supply depot for all our deeper ambitions in the solar system. It was to be our base camp for the ascent of the cosmic Everest. Consider the sheer difference in scale. A journey to the moon is a 3-day trip. It is a challenging and dangerous voyage, but it is a manageable one. It is close enough that in an emergency, a rescue mission is at least theoretically possible. This proximity made it the perfect place to learn how to live in deep space. We could have tested our habitats, our life support systems, our rovers, and our methods for protecting astronauts from cosmic radiation in a real, unforgiving, off-world environment, all while being just a long weekend's journey from home. The moon was also a scientific treasure chest, a pristine library of the solar system's violent history. Because it has no atmosphere and no significant geological activity, its surface is a 4.5 billion-year-old record of the past. The craters that cover its face tell the story of the late heavy bombardment, a period of intense asteroid impacts that also shaped the early Earth. The lunar rocks brought back by the Apollo astronauts revolutionized our understanding of how planets form. Future missions hoped to drill into its permanently shadowed polar craters, where frozen water, a fossil record of cometary impacts, could tell us about the origins of water in our own oceans. With the moon gone, this priceless library has been burned, its ancient scrolls scattered to the void. Perhaps most critically, the moon was to be our springboard, a place to gather and utilize local resources to make the exploration of the rest of the solar system possible. The very soil of the moon is rich in oxygen, silicon, and metals like aluminum and titanium. The discovery of water ice at its poles was a revelation. This ice could be mined and separated into hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen could be used for breathing, and the hydrogen and oxygen together form the most powerful chemical rocket fuel we know. The dream was to build a refueling station on the moon. Instead of having to launch a massive, fully fueled spacecraft for Mars from the bottom of Earth's deep and powerful gravity well, we could launch a much lighter craft into Earth orbit, refuel it with fuel produced on the moon, and then begin the long journey to Mars. The moon was the key to unlocking an efficient and sustainable deep space economy. Without it, the landscape of exploration is terrifyingly barren. The next major object of interest is no longer a 3-day trip away. It is the planet Mars, a journey that takes a minimum of 6 to 8 months, one way. The technological, psychological, and logistical leap from orbiting our own planet to mounting a mission to Mars without a lunar proving ground is immense. It is like trying to learn to cross an ocean without ever having learned to sail across a lake. The sky itself would feel different. No longer would it contain that bright, tantalizing, and achievable next stop. There would be the Earth, our home, and then an almost unimaginably vast and empty gulf, punctuated only by the faint, distant spark of Mars. The disappearance of the moon raises the walls of our planetary cradle so high that the dream of ever climbing out, of ever becoming a multiplanetary species, may have vanished right along with it. Our journey together has so far painted a bleak and sorrowful portrait of a world bereft of its closest companion. We have stood on the shores of its newly silent oceans, shivered in the profound darkness of its endless nights, and looked forward into a deep future of climatic chaos and geological violence. We have mourned the loss of a cultural muse, a spiritual guide, and our practical stepping stone to the stars. The story of a moonless Earth, from this perspective, seems to be a story of endings. It appears to be an undeniable and irreversible death sentence for the world as we have known it, a slow descent into a state that is fundamentally hostile to the complex, delicate web of life that currently thrives here. And for the intricate ecosystems we know and love, this is undoubtedly true. But to end the story there would be to underestimate the single most powerful and creative force in the known universe: life itself. Life is not a delicate flower, waiting for the perfect garden in which to grow. Life is a tenacious, stubborn, and endlessly inventive force. So now, let us ask a different question. In the face of this planetary catastrophe, is it truly the end? Or is it perhaps a new and terrible beginning? To find the answer, we must first look down, not up. We must journey to the parts of our world that are already shielded from the rhythms of the sun and the sky, places that have never known the light of the moon. Let us descend into the deep ocean abyss, miles beneath the turbulent surface. Down here, in the crushing pressure and absolute blackness, is a world that operates on an entirely different set of rules. Life here is not powered by sunlight, but by the raw chemical energy seeping from hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor, volcanic fissures that bleed heat and minerals from the planet's molten heart. This is the world of chemosynthesis. Bizarre tube worms, ghostly white crabs, and strange, pale fish thrive in this environment. Their entire ecosystem powered by microbes that can metabolize sulfur. The chaos on the surface, the raging storms, the seasons of fire and ice would be a distant, muffled echo in this deep sanctuary. The abyss would become the ultimate refuge, a planetary life raft where the ancient spark of life could persist, patiently waiting for the surface world to find a new, albeit violent, equilibrium. And we can go deeper still. In recent decades, science has revealed one of the most astonishing facts about our planet: the existence of a deep biosphere. For miles beneath our feet, within the microscopic water-filled cracks in the solid rock of the Earth's crust, there is life. An immense and ancient ecosystem of microbes, known as extremophiles, survives here. This is life at its most patient and resilient. These organisms live on a geological timescale, with metabolic rates so slow that they might only reproduce once every 1,000 years. They are almost completely insulated from the surface world, drawing their meager energy from the slow decay of radioactive elements and the chemical reactions of the rock itself. The cataclysmic seasons of a moonless Earth would mean nothing to this subterranean world. It would continue its slow, quiet existence, a deep reservoir of life, a silent testament to the fact that life, once it takes hold, is almost impossible to fully extinguish. But what of the surface? Would it become completely sterile? Unlikely. The initial extinction event would be profound, but life is an opportunist. In the ruins of the old world, new ecosystems would eventually emerge, brutally tailored to the new rules of survival. Microbes, algae, lichens, and fungi are masters of dormancy. They could evolve to survive the centuries-long deep freezes, reawakening during the violent, flooded springs to bloom and reproduce at an explosive rate. Insects, with their rapid life cycles, would adapt quickly, their populations booming and busting with the chaotic seasons. Over a much longer timescale of millions of years, new forms of complex life could even arise, creatures that seem like science fiction to us. Perhaps great, burrowing animals that spend the extreme seasons in deep hibernation, or nomadic herds that are genetically programmed to follow the habitable zone in a perpetual, planet-girdling migration. And what of humanity? If some small pockets of our species were to survive the initial centuries of chaos, could we endure? Our defining characteristic has always been not physical resilience, but mental adaptability. Survival would demand that we use our intelligence to insulate ourselves from the planet's new hostility. We can imagine self-sufficient cities built deep underground, powered by geothermal energy, their inhabitants never seeing the violent sky above. We might build vast, ark-like habitats, floating in the more stable layers of the upper atmosphere. Or perhaps we would not retreat, but adapt our entire culture to the new reality. We could become a species of global nomads, our societies built not around fixed locations, but around the sacred, constant motion of the Great Migration, following the fleeting temperate zone as it sweeps across the planet twice a year. Such a life would be hard, but it would not be without meaning. It would be a culture in perfect, dynamic harmony with the planet's new and powerful rhythm. The loss of the moon, then, would not be an ending. It would be a great filter, an event that wipes the planetary slate clean, destroying the old world built on the luxury of stability. But in the ruins, the incredible, stubborn force of life itself persists, revealing its deepest reserves of creativity and resilience in the face of unimaginable change. Our journey has been a long one, spanning 1,000,000 years of a future that can never be, and 4 billion years of a past that was essential for our own existence. We have witnessed the profound physical unraveling of a world, and marveled at the incredible resilience of life in the face of it. We have seen the darkness and the chaos, but also the stubborn persistence of the will to survive. But now, we must make the most important turn of our journey. We must turn our gaze away from the imagined Earth and back towards ourselves. For the story of a vanished moon in the end, is not really about a planet. It is a story about us. It is a grand cosmic metaphor, a fable written in the language of gravity and light that can teach us something profound about the most intimate experiences of our own lives, the nature of loss, the pain of change, and the quiet, resilient strength we find in the aftermath. In this story, the moon has been our symbol of the great constant. In our own lives, we all have our own moons. They are the anchors of our existence, the sources of stability and light that we orbit, often without even realizing it. A moon can be a person, a partner, a parent, a lifelong friend, whose presence is so fundamental to our world that we cannot imagine our life without them. It can be a place, a childhood home, a beloved city that defines our sense of who we are. It can be a career, a belief system, or a dream for the future that acts as the gravitational center of our daily lives, the thing that gives us our sense of direction and purpose. These are the constants we take for granted, the fixtures in our personal sky that we believe will always be there. And the silent, instantaneous disappearance of the moon in our story is a metaphor for the moment when one of those constants is suddenly taken away. The first moonless night, with its profound and shocking darkness, is the initial, numbing shock of loss. It is the moment the world stops making sense, the moment the familiar landscape of our life is plunged into a cold and alien darkness. Our personal sky is suddenly empty, and the silence is deafening. The landmarks that once guided us are gone, and we are left feeling utterly and completely disoriented. The unmooring of the tides, the chaotic, violent sloshing of the world's oceans as they seek a new equilibrium, is a perfect mirror for the emotional turmoil that follows this initial shock. It is the period of intense grief, of unpredictable waves of sadness, anger, and confusion that crash against the shores of our consciousness. Our inner world, once governed by a predictable rhythm, becomes a chaotic sea. We feel unmoored, adrift, tossed about by forces that feel far beyond our control as we struggle to find a new and much quieter emotional baseline. But perhaps the most powerful and poignant part of the metaphor is the story of the Earth's great wobble. This is the long, slow, creeping instability that begins, unseen and unfelt, long after the initial chaos has subsided. This represents the deep and permanent ways in which a profound loss changes us. It is not about the initial acute pain of grief, but about the slow, dawning realization that the fundamental climate of our life has been altered forever. Our old assumptions, our predictable inner seasons, are no longer reliable. The sense of stability we once took for granted is gone, leaving us more vulnerable to the small gravitational nudges of everyday life's challenges. A profound loss can subtly but permanently alter our own axial tilt, changing the way we face the world, the way we experience the light and the warmth of our own lives. Yet, as we saw in our story, life finds a way, and so do we. The resilience of the extremophiles in the deep, insulated sanctuaries of the earth is a metaphor for our own deep reserves of strength. In the aftermath of loss, we too retreat to our own inner sanctuaries, the core parts of our identity, our deepest values, our most cherished memories, that are shielded from the external chaos. And just as life on the surface learns to adapt, creating new ecosystems tailored to the new reality, we too begin the slow, difficult process of adaptation. We develop new coping mechanisms, new ways of being. We learn to live with the quiet tides and the darker nights. This is the quiet, stubborn miracle of human resilience. A planet without its moon must find a new center of gravity, its dance now dictated solely by the distant, massive sun. And a person who has lost a great external anchor must, in the end, do the same. We must learn to find a new center of gravity, not in something external, but deep within ourselves. The great absence in the sky becomes a mirror for the voids we must all learn to navigate, and a lesson that the most profound stability is the kind we learn to build inside. Our journey is nearing its end. We have traveled across the unfathomable landscapes of deep time. We have witnessed the deconstruction and the stubborn rebirth of a world, and we have explored the quiet, inner landscapes of the human heart as it grapples with a loss of cosmic proportions. We have learned that the story of a vanished moon is a story of chaos, of resilience, and of profound, quiet change. And like any great fable, any story that has been told and retold to teach us something about ourselves, this speculative journey leaves us with a moral. It leaves us with a series of quiet truths, a set of profound perspectives that we can carry with us long after the story is over. The great and empty space left in the night sky is not truly empty. It is filled with lessons. Let us now, in these final, quiet moments of our exploration, gather these lessons together. Let us reflect on the enduring legacies of our lost moon. The first and most fundamental of these is the legacy of interconnectedness. Before its disappearance, we saw the moon as a separate entity, a beautiful but distinct object that hung in the sky, apart from us. Its loss revealed the profound truth that nothing in the universe truly exists in isolation. The world is not a collection of separate things, but a single, intricately woven tapestry. The moon was not just one decorative thread in this tapestry, it was a primary, structural thread, and its removal caused the entire pattern to unravel in ways we could never have foreseen. We saw how its gravity was connected to the rhythm of the tides. We saw how the tides were connected to the very existence of the intertidal ecosystems. We saw how those ecosystems were connected to the stability of the global food web, from the smallest shorebird to the largest bear. We saw how the tidal currents were connected to the circulation of the oceans, and how that circulation was connected to the stability of the global climate. We even saw how those ancient, powerful tides may have been connected to the very origin of life itself. This legacy teaches us a deep and necessary cosmic humility. It urges us to see the world not in terms of separate objects, but in terms of relationships. It is a quiet, powerful argument against the illusion of separateness, reminding us that every part of the cosmos, from a distant orbiting moon to a single living cell, is part of the same unbroken whole. The second lesson that shines in the moonless sky is the legacy of fragile stability. In our daily lives, we are surrounded by an illusion of permanence. The ground beneath our feet feels solid and unmoving. The sun rises each morning with dependable certainty. The seasons arrive in their proper order. We build our lives upon this foundation of reliability. We believe that our world is inherently stable. The story of the lost moon reveals this to be the most beautiful and dangerous of illusions. Our world's stability, its gentle climate, its predictable seasons, these are not intrinsic properties of the Earth itself. They are a gift. They are the product of an active, dynamic, and incredibly fortunate celestial arrangement. For billions of years, the moon was the silent guarantor of this gift. Our planet, we learned, is not walking on a wide and solid bridge through the cosmos. It is, and has always been, walking on a tightrope, and the moon was the balancing pole that kept it from falling into the chaos of fire and ice. This legacy teaches us a profound sense of cosmic gratitude. It asks us to see the calm and nurturing world we inhabit not as a given, but as a precious and improbable miracle. It is a lesson that the peace we experience is a delicate and temporary state, one that deserves our awe, our appreciation, and our protection. And this leads us to the third and most intimate lesson, the legacy of impermanence. The story of a vanished moon is the ultimate fable about the nature of reality itself. It proves that nothing, no matter how vast, how ancient, or how seemingly eternal, is guaranteed to last forever. If an object that has been the constant companion of our planet for 4.5 billion years can be erased from the story in an instant, then everything is subject to the ceaseless flow of change. This is the universe's most fundamental law. For the human heart, this can feel like a sorrowful truth, but it can also be a liberating one. If nothing is permanent, then we are freed from the heavy burden of trying to cling to things as they are. This legacy teaches us that wisdom does not lie in resisting change, but in learning to adapt to it with grace. It is a lesson in the art of letting go. It teaches us to find beauty not in the illusion of permanence, but in the elegant, ever-changing dance of the present moment. These three legacies, interconnectedness, fragile stability, and impermanence, are the final gifts of our vanished companion. The empty space it left behind has become a quiet teacher, its silence speaking a wisdom more profound than its light ever could. Our grand cosmic journey is now complete. We have traveled to the ends of time. We have witnessed the birth and the unraveling of a world, and we have gathered the quiet, starlit wisdom left behind in the great and empty sky. We have seen that the story of a lost moon is a fable of interconnectedness, of fragile stability, and of the universal law of impermanence. We have held these lessons up to the light and seen our own lives, our own losses, and our own resilience reflected in them. And now, we have come to the final and most important part of our travels. The journey outward is over, and the journey inward begins. It is time to take the vast, cosmic lessons of our story and apply them in the most intimate and personal way possible, as a gentle guide to finding our own peace, our own stability, in the quiet moments before we drift off to sleep. Our story taught us that the Earth's peace depended on a great external anchor, the moon. Its presence kept the planet's axis steady, its climate predictable, its rhythm stable. Its absence left the world vulnerable, wobbling and chaotic. In our own waking lives, we too are often convinced that our sense of peace and stability depends on external anchors. We tether our happiness to our jobs, to our relationships, to the approval of others, to our plans for the future, or to our memories of the past. We believe that if all of these external things remain in their proper orbits, then we will feel stable and calm. But as our story has so powerfully shown us, everything in the external world is, like the moon, subject to the law of impermanence. Anchors can shift, tides can change, and moons can, metaphorically, disappear. To place our entire sense of stability in something outside of ourselves is to build our house upon a foundation that can always be shaken. Let us imagine, just for a moment, that your own mind is a planet. It has its own internal climate, its own seasons of emotion. It has its own gravitational forces, the pulls and pushes of daily life that compete for your attention. And on some days, and especially during the quiet of the night, this inner world can feel like it is starting to wobble. A worry about tomorrow, a regret about yesterday, a difficult conversation that keeps replaying itself. These are the chaotic, gravitational nudges from the distant planets of our lives. They are the forces that can tip our internal axis, making us feel anxious, unsettled, and off balance. And in these moments, our first instinct is often to search for a new external anchor, to distract ourselves with a screen, or to try and force our thoughts into a sense of order. But our cosmic fable has taught us a different, more profound lesson. The Earth could not rebuild its lost moon. The only true peace to be found was in adapting to the new reality. The most profound stability, therefore, is not the kind that is imposed from the outside, but the kind that is discovered deep within. And so, in these last few moments before you sleep, let us practice finding this inner anchor. Let it be your breath. Your breath is the one rhythm that is always with you. It is the quiet, reliable metronome of your own life. It asks for nothing. It simply is. As you lie here in the stillness of your room, gently bring your awareness to this rhythm. You do not need to change it or control it in any way. Simply notice it. Feel the gentle rise of your chest or your abdomen on the in-breath, and the soft release and surrender of the out-breath. Each breath is a small, gentle tide, a reminder that you are alive in this present moment. And this present moment is your sanctuary. It is the deep, quiet biosphere of your own being, insulated from the imagined chaos of the past and the future. As you rest your attention here, you may still notice the gravitational nudges of your thoughts. A worry may appear on the horizon of your mind. A memory may flash. See them for what they are: distant planets, faint whispers. They do not have to pull you off your axis. You do not have to engage with them or follow them on their long orbits. Simply acknowledge their presence, and then gently, without judgment, guide your attention back to the simple, physical sensation of your breathing. The breath is your anchor in the here and now. Each time you return to it, you are strengthening your own internal center of gravity. You are teaching yourself that your peace does not depend on the sky being clear of thoughts, but on your ability to find a quiet, stable center, regardless of what is passing through your sky. This is the great secret. The stability was not in the moon, but in the balanced dance. Your peace is not in the absence of thoughts, but in your ability to rest in the quiet space that holds them. Now there is nothing left to do. The journey is over. Simply rest here, anchored to the quiet, steady rhythm of your own being, and allow the gentle tide of your breath to carry you into the deep, peaceful ocean of sleep. And so, our long and quiet journey comes to its end. We have traveled together across unimaginable gulfs of time and space, all from the stillness of our own imagination. We stood in the profound and star-dusted darkness of a world that has lost its oldest companion. We have felt the silence of its oceans. We have witnessed the slow, inexorable beginning of its great, chaotic wobble, and we have traveled into its deep future to see a world of fire and ice, a planet forever changed. We journeyed back to the very dawn of our world, to the shores of the primordial ocean, and discovered that the very spark of life may have been a gift from our now vanished moon. We have sifted through the ashes of our culture, our art, and our myths, and felt the deep, hollow void left by its absence. We have looked out to the stars and seen our future ambitions curtailed, our stepping stone to the cosmos gone forever. And through it all, we have marveled at the stubborn, quiet resilience of life and of the human spirit. We have returned from this epic journey, not with souvenirs of rock and dust, but with the quiet, intangible lessons that the great and empty sky now teaches. We have learned that all things are connected in a vast and delicate cosmic tapestry. We have learned that the stability we cherish is a precious and fragile gift, not a permanent guarantee. And we have learned that impermanence is the great underlying truth of our universe, a truth that invites us not to fear, but to embrace the gentle, ever-changing flow of the present moment. We have brought these cosmic lessons home and seen in them a mirror for our own lives, a fable to help us navigate our own losses and find our own unshakable inner anchor. The story is now complete. The journey is over. There is nothing left to learn, nothing left to explore, nothing left to solve. There is only the quiet of this moment and the gentle invitation to rest. As you lie here now, at the end of all things, Allow the story and all its vast ideas to gently dissolve, like ripples fading on the surface of a calm lake. Let go of the images of the distant past and the far future. Let go of the thoughts of your day, the plans for your tomorrow. All of these are distant planets, faint and far away. They have no power here, in this quiet sanctuary of your own being. Here, there is only the simple, physical reality of your body at rest. Bring your awareness to the feeling of the bed beneath you, supporting you completely. Feel the gentle weight of your limbs, a pleasant heaviness that invites you to sink deeper into comfort. Feel the warmth of the blankets around you, a safe and gentle embrace. You have carried the weight of the day, and now you have permission to set it down. You are safe. You are supported, and all that is asked of you now is to let go. Return, one last time, to the quiet, reliable rhythm of your own breath, the soft, easy inhale, and the long, gentle, releasing exhale. This is the natural tide of your own body, a rhythm of life that will carry you now into the great, peaceful ocean of sleep. With every exhale, feel yourself letting go just a little bit more, releasing the tension in your shoulders, softening the muscles in your face, around your eyes and your jaw, allowing your body to become heavy, limp, and deeply relaxed. Sleep is a journey, the most ancient and natural journey of all. It is a journey inward, into the silent, healing cosmos of your own mind. It is a place of rest, of renewal, and of peace. You do not need to seek it or to chase it. You only need to allow it to arrive. And so you can let go now. Let the gentle current carry you. There is nowhere else you need to be, and nothing else you need to do. Simply rest. Simply be. The journey continues, always calmly, always at the pace of the universe.